Most soldier players default to running the gunboats as their secondary, or maybe one of the banners if they are a team player. And it is no surprise because all of these unlocks are really good. The result of soldier having so many viable unlocks is that the stock shotgun is often overlooked. I can understand why many players put the shotgun aside and forget about it. The gunboats allow for an incredibly fast-paced and versatile roaming playstyle, and the banners can provide immense value to a soldier and his team in short bursts, as well as having useful passive bonuses. So why use the shotgun? Well, anyone who has been playing TF2 for a while probably knows that even though shotguns don't have any fancy passive bonuses or borderline overpowered active abilities, they are really, really good at killing things. At least if you can aim. With a shotgun equipped, you are essentially trading utility weapons for more firepower. This is something that you should keep in the back of your mind when you're playing shotgun soldier. Because soldier has so many good secondaries, you've got options. Sometimes I realize that I am no longer getting any use out of my shotgun, and I instead equip the gunboats for cheaper rocket jumps or maybe one of the banners. This is just the reality of the gunboats meta we have been living in for about a decade. If you aren't getting value out of the shotgun's one and only ability of dealing damage, then a secondary that provides a useful passive is just better. It is difficult to quantify exactly when the shotgun becomes worth it, but I will say there are definitely fights where I don't use my shotgun at all, but I benefit from knowing that it's there in my back pocket should I need it. Rockets are typically a better weapon in most situations, so just because you have the shotty doesn't mean you absolutely have to use it. While on the topic of when to use what weapons, I want to elaborate a bit on your choice in primary and melee weapons before talking about gameplay. For your primary weapon, I would mostly recommend the stock rocket launcher or the original, which are essentially the same thing. These are not only the most reliable primaries for soldiers, but also one of the most versatile weapons in the game. Their damage output is also arguably the best out of all of the rocket launchers, and damage output is going to be the main focus when you're playing shotgun soldier. Some people might argue that the direct hit is better at dealing damage than stock, and while this is true if you can hit your shots, it only applies to single target damage. The ability to hit multiple targets with one rocket is immensely powerful, and is often overlooked by direct hit advocates. Area of effect also allows you to better control choke points, which is very important. Another thing worth mentioning is that we are all human, and sometimes we miss. With stock, you will often deal splash damage when you beef your shot. So, while in a vacuum the direct hit is better at 1v1s, I find that stock is more forgiving and well-rounded. For these reasons, the direct hit is weaker than stock in my opinion, but it's still a decent choice.
Soldier is a spy!
One could probably argue that the Beggar's Bazooka has a better damage output than stock. I have a ton of respect for the Beggar's mains out there, but the Beggar's is less reliable than stock. Very good, yes, but also less reliable. Furthermore, running it with anything but the gunboats or man-treads doesn't make much sense to me because of how fun bombing is with this gun, so I can't really recommend it for shotgun soldier. I do hope to make a video talking about the Beggars in depth eventually, but it will be a while because I need to get better with it first. Finally, the Black Box is probably a decent pick too, since your shotgun helps make up for the giant downside of one less rocket, but to be honest, I almost never use the Black Box because it promotes a very boring, selfish playstyle on one of the most interesting classes in the game. Frankly, the Black Box might be one of the most overrated weapons in TF2, and like the Beggars, it probably deserves a video of its own. Let me know if you want me to elaborate, and I will. The last primary weapon you can consider running is the Cow Mangler. I am adding this section in post because I completely forgot about this weapon until I was almost finished producing this video, and to be honest, the reason I forgot about it is because I almost never use it. Don't get me wrong, the charge shot mechanic is fun, and not having to worry about running out of rockets is nice, but the 80% less damage to buildings is just too big of a downside in casual. You are basically unable to deal with buildings with the Cow Mangler, which is a big deal when you consider that Soldier soft counters NG with stock or direct hit equipped. Sure, the charge shot stuns buildings, but if I'm going to spend 4 rockets on a building, I'd rather just spam it out and kill the gun myself instead of relying on my team to follow up. I'm sure that there is a use for the charge shot in some context. I'm pretty sure it disables the Wrangler shield or something, but good luck ever coordinating this in a casual lobby. If you think I'm wrong, just let me know in the comments, I guess. Of course, if the other team has no Engies, then this weapon is basically a straight upgrade, as long as you don't have a crits medic who doesn't know about the no crits downside of the Cow Mangler. Anyways, let's talk about secondaries. Obviously, for the context of this video, I am assuming you are using either the stock shotgun, the panic attack, or the reserve shooter. Just to reiterate, if I somehow didn't already get the point across, Soldier has tons of good options in his secondary slot. I could ramble all day about Soldier secondaries, since pretty much all of them are good except for the Righteous Bison. To sum it up, using a shotgun makes you better at 1v1s. The cost of substantially improving your 1v1 matchup is that you lose out on the insane mobility that the gunboats provide. It is harder to justify high bombing with 2 rockets when it costs 100 health instead of 40. You can absolutely be super mobile with a shotgun equipped, but you are more reliant on getting heals from a medic or super dependent on picking up multiple health packs. The other major downside of the shotgun is you don't have the powerful team support capabilities of the banners. So basically with the shotgun equipped, you are sacrificing insane mobility and insane support capabilities in order to become the strongest 1v1 class in the game. And I do believe that Soldier has a favorable matchup versus every class with the shotgun equipped, but I will elaborate more later in this video. As you probably already know, Soldier does have 2 shotguns other than stock, the panic attack and the reserve shooter. I'm of the opinion that stock is probably the best out of the 3. Arguably the strongest aspect of the reserve shooter is the ability to mini-crit soldiers, demos, and pyros when they are jumping around. This sounds really good on paper, and it is, but I find in practice there simply aren't enough explosive classes jumping around to get value out of this consistently enough to justify losing 2 shots. I ended up loading up Hightower in search of soldiers who rocket jump a lot, and I immediately went on what is probably the most unethical godlike killstreak of my TF2 career. So I guess the takeaway is that the reserve shooter is really good at what it does, but I just don't find it all that practical in most of my games. I also just kind of find it scummy to use in this way, so I generally avoid the weapon anyways. In games that aren't Hightower, the reserve shooter's main purpose is when you juggle an opponent with a rocket and need to quickly finish them off. Pulling off this combo is quite satisfying, but to be honest, most of the time the shotgun would have also dealt a killing blow since you did just hit a rocket to juggle the target, so the mini crit is a bit redundant. I suppose the faster weapon swap speed might help a bit, but in my opinion the upsides of this weapon are just not worth the smaller clip size. On the flip side, I have found that the panic attack is usually on par with the shotgun. The extra switch speed is very nice for finishing off low opponents, or if you are panicking and need some damage fast. The lack of random bullet spread is also nice, and I think that this gun is objectively better than the stock shotgun at point blank ranges. I still use the shotgun most of the time because of its reliability at medium ranges, where the panic attack starts to be hurt by its different spread pattern. This is just personal preference, and I do think the argument can be made that the panic attack is better on close quarters maps. Okay, moving on to melee weapons. As soldier players, we have the luxury of 3 super solid choices: the Market Gardener, the Escape Plan, and the Disciplinary Action. Without the gunboats, I would avoid the Market Gardener. Having a shotgun also means that you have extra damage, so the Market Gardener's only real purpose of dealing lots of damage is a bit redundant, especially when rocket jumping is expensive because, well, no gunboats. This brings me to the 2 melees I recommend, the Whip and the Pickaxe. I mostly use the Whip because it synergizes well with the shotgun. The lack of cheap rocket jumps means that being able to roll out faster is very useful, and it comes with the added benefit of preserving your crit heals. The Whip also enables you to speed up a friendly heavy's rollout by a few seconds, which is very, very powerful. This weapon is also crazy useful on King of the Hill and 5 control point maps. In these game modes, teams race to get to the point as quickly as possible at the start of the round, and whipping your entire team so they arrive a second or two earlier is incredibly good. Lastly, having extra movement speed can make high bombs and fast bombs faster and more lethal. With all of that being said, the disciplinary action has one glaring weakness. It relies on having teammates nearby to activate its ability. If there is a teammate, you can easily make use of its essentially free mobility, but if there isn't one, you're stuck waddling. If you want reliability, look no further than the escape plan. If you're healthy, you can just rocket jump, and if you're low, you get the speed boost. The escape plan does give you the ability to easily build Uber, which is really only useful in extremely niche situations or game modes such as Ulti-Duo, but I suppose it is worth mentioning since the Zatoichi is sometimes run for this reason. Anyways, the choice of melee weapon really just comes down to personal preference. Soldier is one of the strongest classes in TF2, and while the reasons for this are numerous, it can be easily summed up. He is a generalist. You might have heard this term thrown around in tier list videos or in balanced discussions, but what does it actually mean? Well, basically Soldier is a generalist because he can move really fast. To explain it a bit better, Soldier is just good at everything. Movement speed, lots of damage, crowd control, you name it, he's got it. Furthermore, all of his class matchups are neutral or favorable. Specifically highlighting his matchups, running a shotgun helps Soldier with some of his tougher matchups such as Scouts, Pyros, and other soldiers. More on this later. TF2 is a well-balanced game, so just because you picked the Soldier class doesn't mean you are going to win every technically favorable matchup like it's rock, paper, scissors. Consistently winning fights will require you to both have adequate mechanics that enable you to land your shots, and possess enough game knowledge to go into fights with as many advantages as possible. I cannot teach you aim and movement in a video format. You have to play the game to get better at these things. That leaves just game knowledge. The main characteristic that all of the generalist classes share is movement speed. Moving fast in Team Fortress 2 is extremely powerful. Being able to dodge damage beats out tanking it. Heavy is walking talking proof of this concept. If you want to be successful as Soldier, and more specifically Shotgun Soldier, you need to effectively use your rocket jumping to ensure you're avoiding disadvantageous situations and to put yourself into advantageous ones. There are many ways you can gain an advantage in TF2. One of the easiest is to spot a numbers advantage. Ganging up on a lonesome enemy may be less honorable, but your chances of winning the fight are significantly higher than if you were to 1v1. You can rocket jump to quickly come to the aid of a teammate engaged in a fight, or jump away to avoid getting 1v2'd yourself. You are almost always more useful to your team alive than dead, so there is no shame in just running away if it means you can get set up again for another push or defense. The positioning of both parties can also provide advantages and disadvantages. I've already made a more in-depth guide to Soldier positioning, but to sum it up, high ground is really good. Being above your opponent allows you to more easily land your rockets, and it makes you a more difficult target to hit. You can obviously use rocket jumping to quickly climb to the high ground, as well as challenge enemy players who are attempting to control high ground. Furthermore, you want to avoid being in choke points when you are fighting, and ideally fight an enemy when they are in a tight space because landing rockets is much easier this way. Another case of map design coming in handy is health packs. Controlling a large, medium, or even small pack during a fight can essentially give you extra health as long as you play it right. Combine this with high ground advantage or the safety of a choke point, and your fights can be immensely skewed in your favor. You want as many advantages as possible, since less advantages mean you will inevitably take more damage or use more ammo to win a fight. Having the mentality that health and ammo are resources to be managed carefully and leveraged for impact on the game is, in my opinion, incredibly important. People often rag on the Soldier class for being stupid easy. Just shoot the ground with rockets and win. This is ignoring the fact that, firstly, Team Fortress 2 is a class-based shooter in which the classes are supposed to have distinct skill sets, and secondly, soldiers are supposed to be good at killing things. Soldier being good at combat is literally his class identity. What many players fail to realize and implement into their gameplay is that just because you can win a fair 1 versus 1 versus most classes as a soldier, it doesn't mean that you should ever play fair in the first place. Take every advantage that you can. Play around health packs, land on the high ground when you bomb, and seek out fights where you have a number advantage. Following a similar train of thought, you also want to avoid fights that are not in your favor. Why would you choose to commit to a fight you are almost certain to lose when you could run away and wait for a more opportune moment? The easiest way to avoid a bad fight is to just rocket jump away. As a shotgun soldier, you will have to think more carefully about your positioning because while you have the same level of mobility as a gunboat soldier initially, your health will disappear fast if you're rocket jumping a lot without getting healed. Speaking of jumping around, roaming around and flanking the other team is still viable, you just have to plan your route around health packs even more. Once you do actually manage to get behind the other team, you are better off with the shotgun because of the additional firepower it provides. This is a common theme with the shotgun. Once you get over the downside of not having the gunboats, you are basically just an upgraded soldier. You can also still high bomb, but getting an overheal before going is even more important than usual because of the additional rocket jumping cost. Again, if you can get over the additional cost of rocket jumping, you're just a better soldier. Many players do not expect you to bust out a shotgun during a fight because, well, the gunboats meta has conditioned players into forgetting that soldier even has a secondary that does damage. I honestly am on the receiving end of the shotgun surprise sometimes, where I will be fighting a soldier and end up losing because he had a shotgun in his back pocket. In my anecdotal experience, Pyro players are especially taken aback by the shotgun. Some are so surprised that they will forget that they can't reflect a shotgun shot and just keep staring at you. Alright, throughout this whole video so far, I have mentioned that the shotgun's main downside is that it isn't the gunboats or the banners. It is time to move on to the meat and potatoes of this video, how to use the shotgun to its fullest potential. The shotgun's main selling point is the additional stopping power it gives the soldier. You have a very powerful rocket launcher as your primary damage dealing weapon and a shotgun for cleanup. Unlike all of Soldier's primary weapons, his shotguns are hit scan, meaning they deal immediate damage. This means that you can sync up a rocket and a shotgun shell to deal their damage at the same time, essentially one-shotting a player before they have time to react. The hit scan nature of the shotgun also makes your matchups versus scouts and pyros much easier. When fighting a scout, it is pretty common to land a single splash rocket and then fail to land the killing blow. Other times you might land 2 splash rockets, but the scout lives at 1 health. Hitting a scout with a shotgun shot is still pretty hard because scout is just hard to hit, but it is much easier to deal hit scan damage in most situations. I find that in many encounters, I am able to land 1 good rocket and finish the scout off with 1 or 2 shells. Pyro is the elephant in the room when it comes to soldier matchups, and obviously the shotgun really helps out. As a gunboats or banner soldier, you really do not want to fire rockets at a pyro who is at mid to long range. Up close, you can risk shooting rockets at a pyro because at this range the pyro has to successfully guess when you are going to shoot in order to air blast you. It is impossible to react to a rocket at point blank. Obviously the downside to being up close to a pyro is that he can shoot you with his flamethrower. This essentially means that in order to fight a good pyro and win, you have to get up close and pray that they don't guess your rocket timings. I would say that the matchup is still in Soldier's favor, but it's pretty decent chances for the pyro as well. When you add a shotgun into the mix, the matchup is significantly skewed in the Soldier's favor. At mid-range, you can deal chip shots to the pyro with your shotgun. Unless they have a shotgun of their own, their secondary will not be able to compete with the shotgun's damage output at this range, so they will be forced to back off or try and close the distance with you. If they do close the distance, you can switch to your rocket launcher and finish them off quickly, or stick to the shotgun to try to get the frag. If the engagement starts up close and you are confident in your aim, you can just use the shotgun instead of your rocket launcher to avoid the pyro from getting a lucky timing at all. There are also mind games you can play with pyros by starting a fight with the shotgun to make them think you aren't going to shoot any rockets, and then switching to rockets when you break line of sight. Overall, a shotgun just gives you the versatility to approach a pyro however you like and still have the upper hand. The shotgun also improves Soldier's matchup versus other classes. Before I started to gather footage for this video, I was not expecting the heavy matchup to be greatly impacted. After using the shotgun a lot more, I found that when fighting heavies, it's nice to have extra damage in your back pocket if they are overhealed or you miss a rocket. The shotty was often the difference maker in my fights, especially if the heavy understood that getting corner peeked is a losing battle for him and he attempted to corner peek into me. It also helps a great deal against Demo because it allows you to shoot a Demoman point blank without dealing self damage. an ability which the demo does not have with his primary or secondary weapons. It's also nice to have a bullet damage versus hybrid and demo knights, since their shields do not have any bullet damage resistance. Oftentimes, I'm able to land 2 or 3 good rockets on the Demo Knight since most Demo Knight players move extremely predictably, but I run out of rockets and rely on the shotgun to finish the job. This is obviously helpful if the Demo Knight is able to get close to you, since rockets deal self-damage at point blank. An additional damage type is also nice versus Vaccinator medics, although a competent Vaccinator medic is thankfully a very rare sight. Engineers with short circuits are another niche example where the shotgun really helps. You could argue that the shotgun actually makes dealing with sniper harder, which I would sort of agree with. Closing the distance between you and the sniper is the main factor in whether or not you can kill a sniper, so the lack of gunboats definitely hurts in some cases, but once you're up close, the shotgun still is nice to have as a finisher weapon, or extra damage if you have no rockets loaded. Speaking of using the shotgun as a finisher weapon, I want to point out that while the shotgun is a potent weapon, the rocket launcher is simply better in most situations. Sometimes it is definitely worth switching from primary to secondary multiple times during a fight, since it is slightly faster to switch weapons and shoot than it is to wait for the weapon to be ready to fire again. That being said, because rockets are just better at dealing damage in most situations, it does feel like it is truly your primary with the shotgun as your secondary. If you are like me and you play a ton of stock Demoman, this does feel a bit weird since sticky bombs are essentially a second primary. The shotgun is good, but not good enough to be on the same level as the rocket launcher. There are a few times where I would say that your shotgun becomes your primary. Firstly, when you're fighting a M2 Pyro who is good at landing reflex. This one doesn't really need any explanation. Secondly, as I have alluded to, the shotgun is really good at finishing off low health opponents. Sometimes it would be easy to dispatch the target with another rocket, but because it is slightly faster to switch to your shotgun and shoot, and since bullets travel instantaneously unlike your slow-moving rockets, it is ideal if you can secure the frag with a single shell. As I mentioned previously, health and ammo are resources. In any well-designed game, resources are finite and they need to be managed. This is important for all classes in the game, except for Medic, who will pretty much never run out of ammo, although the rule still applies to his health. In fact, Medic's existence actually further solidifies this claim because overheal slowly decays over time. You are incentivized to trade damage when you are overhealed because if you wait too long, it just decays and doesn't do you any good. Obviously, in a perfect world, you wouldn't want to take any damage, but as the old saying goes, you need to take damage to deal damage, or something like that. Well, I digress. Anyways, the soldier is a perfect example of why health and ammo are resources. You can trade some health and ammo in return for faster movement speed via rocket jumping. Managing your health can be challenging, especially without the gunboats because jumping to health packs is less worth it. That being said, packs are still going to be the most reliable source of health and ammo in your games. Sure, dispensers can heal you and replenish your ammo supply, but there is no guarantee you will have an engineer who builds a dispenser in a good spot, or that you will have an engineer at all. Of course, a competent medic is a fantastic source of health, but in my experience solo queuing casual, this is a luxury and not a guarantee. If you do have a medic, try and get a crit overheal whenever possible, and if you make friends with your medic, your shotgun makes you an even better pocket than a gunboat soldier. If you don't have the luxury of a medic who is willing to heal anybody other than the fresh install heavy on your team in a futile effort to recreate the glory of Meet the Medic, then you will have to rely on health packs. My rule of thumb is to back up for health if I hit the 100 health mark. When you are 100 health or lower, you can get one shot by a single scattergun meat shot, direct grenade or sticky, or a direct rocket. Taking any damage at 100 health could prevent you from rocket jumping away, which is not good. There are situations where backing up the instant you hit 100 health isn't ideal, so you will have to rely on your own intuition for times where it is worth ignoring. For example, if you're flanking, sometimes it is better to push even deeper into enemy lines in order to get health as opposed to backing up to the safety of your team. While managing health is more important and arguably more difficult, ammo management is also a very critical skill. When I say ammo management, I am referring to both the total amount of ammo in your ammo reserves and the total amount of ammo loaded in your weapons. Because Soldier relies on rocket jumping in order to move faster than a snail, you generally want to have at least one rocket loaded so you can make a quick escape if necessary. There are times where shooting your last rocket is fine, such as if you are committing for a kill and are fine dying for it, or if you are already in a good position and are confident you won't need to rocket jump for at least a few seconds. Also, having a shotgun means that you might be able to stand and fight instead of retreating because of the extra firepower. All that being said, I generally try and keep at least a single rocket loaded, and I also try to reload a rocket before firing another one when possible. Speaking of the shotgun, you will also have to keep track of how many shots you have loaded if you're using it a lot. Ammo management is important on Soldier even without a shotgun, but since you have so many shots, reloading both of your mags will take painfully long, similar to stock Demoman. Unlike ammo management on Demoman, I think the order in which you should reload your weapons as a soldier is pretty cut and dry. Almost always better to reload your rockets first, since rockets are a better weapon in the majority of situations. Since you don't have the gunboats, you will have to be a bit more conservative with your rocket jumps as a shotgun soldier. That doesn't mean you should never rocket jump, of course. Rolling out is still possible without the gunboats, but you will have to make sure your jumps are landing you near a health pack to heal back up. As I mentioned previously, the disciplinary action is a great option if you're spawning with a wave of friendlies. You can help your teammates get to the front faster and preserve your crit heals. Rocket jumping obviously has uses outside of rolling out. Bombing refers to the use of an aggressive rocket jump in the context of a fight. If you are jumping for mobility, it isn't really a bomb since the intent of the jump isn't to deal damage or distract an opponent. Outside of the increased health cost, there is no downside to bombing with the shotgun. If anything, the shotgun greatly improves your bomb as long as the increased self-damage doesn't get you killed because you simply have a higher possible damage output before having to reload. Again, the best way to reduce the shotgun's downside when jumping is to get a buff first, so to all the medic players who are watching this video, buff your soldiers, pretty please. If I'm full health and I'm calling for medic, it's because I have a crit heal, so if you can take 1.38 seconds to crit heal me before I take random chip damage, that would be great, since it will take 3 times as long if you wait. Staying alive is a good thing. Since you have the shotgun, you are probably going to be going for less trades than if you were rocking the gunboats, because you just can't get value out of the shotgun if you die after shooting just 2 rockets. That being said, sometimes you have a golden opportunity to get a kill you just can't ignore. Trading your life for the life of a medic is usually worth it if you are given the chance, although if the medic just used his Uber, it might be better to focus down his heal target instead. Trading for a competent stock Demoman is also usually a pretty good trade, but it might not be worth it if you are on defense. If you didn't already know, Red Team on Payload, Attack Defend, and the team that currently owns the point on King of the Hill have longer respawn timers than the attacking team. This means that, generally speaking, trades are better when you are attacking and worse when you are defending. There is a theoretical hierarchy for what classes are the best to trade for, then the second best, then not really worth it, and so on. This is assuming that every player is of equal skill, similar to how chess has a piece rating system. In the context of a multiplayer game, this is unrealistic. In actuality, you just have to use your own game sense to determine when it is worth it to secure a trade and when it is better to survive. This skill just comes with experience, although generally speaking, just looking at the scoreboard will give you a pretty good idea of who is having the most impact on the game. Speaking of having impact on the game, you can also attempt to trade your life for capturing an objective instead of getting a frag. Sometimes it is worth it to die, or at least risk dying, in an attempt to win a capture point to give your team forward spawns. Alright, we've reached the point in the video where I am unable to seamlessly write points I want to make into a coherent script, so instead of being a better writer, I just rattle off a bunch of loosely related advice. Firstly, crosshair placement is really important. I know I've talked about this in the past for Soldier, and what I said previously remains true. With your rocket launcher, you want to be pre-aiming where you think your opponent's feet are going to be. Having good crosshair placement can make or break a fight, since the fraction of a second you save on firing your first rocket can be the difference between living and dying. Soldier's shotgun is just like any other shotgun in TF2. You want to aim for your opponent's center of mass. I sometimes struggle to make the adjustment from aiming at feet to aiming at the center of mass when I switch weapons, and I suspect that others will too, so here is a reminder to hopefully help you get better at this. You can use the shotgun to clear sticky traps. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Use corners to your advantage, especially when you're fighting pyros, heavies, and sentry guns. They usually need to have line of sight to damage you, so you can use a corner as a cover to peek out only when you are ready to fire. Right, that is all the advice I have for today. I hope you liked the video. Oh yeah, what are you gonna do now? Oh shit.
Did he own you with the gloves?
Yeah.